and thank you for joining us for this episode of The State of Leadership, Simple and Beyond. That is Robert Hilliard. I am Whitnie Wiley, and this is our weekly discussion about all things leadership. We are here at 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, and we love hearing from you. So thank you for those of you who have reached out and had comments about the program and topics that you'd like to hear. If you are watching us on YouTube, we want to thank you for joining us there. Hit the like button, subscribe, so that you know when we go live every week. And if you are watching somewhere else on LinkedIn or on Facebook, we thank you also for joining us. So this week, we've got an interesting topic. Until a few days ago, I had not heard about this. I am not the world's biggest TikTok user, and apparently this is a conversation that is, I don't know if all the rage is the right way to put it, but getting a lot of buzz over on TikTok. It wasn't that long ago that we were talking about the Great Resignation, right? And what that meant and how leaders could go about maybe stemming the tide of people who were looking to leave. And now we're talking about this phenomenon called quiet quitting. So what is quiet quitting? What does it mean to your workforce? What does it mean for you? Is it a problem? Is it a what is it called? A moniker looking for a solution, or a moniker looking for a problem? I'm not exactly clear. When I read about it, and I'll explain what it is in a minute. When I first read about it, it's like, oh, I've been there. I've been there. I have been there. So basically, in doing my research, as with a lot of things, there's no real clear-cut explanation of what this is. It depends on who you're listening to or watching, or what you're reading. But the core essence is that employees are saying, I'm not going above and beyond anymore. I get paid to do a job. I'm going to do the job I get paid for. At the end of my workday, I'm going home, or I'm shutting you down and moving on with my life. And so the question is there a problem with that? Right? Is there a problem with that? There seems to be a little bit of a divide. I've read a couple of things where people who are, I think maybe in our space, Robert, who are saying, if you feel a need to do this quiet quitting, you should just quit and get another job. I read and heard a few things where people were saying, well, this is the way it should be. This is how it should be, right? And that there was any expectation of anything else maybe is asking too much. So let's start with your thoughts, just sort of laying out your understanding of quiet quitting, and then we can talk about, what's sort of permeating the space. And then, of course, we want to talk about, to the degree it's a problem or a problem for you in your company, what you can do about it, what you can do to turn people around, or what you can do to keep it from happening in the first place. So, Robert.
Well, first of all, the reason why this always makes me laugh, this makes me laugh, is because this is nothing new. So what they've done is they've taken something that has been going on for decades.
They slapped a name on it, right?
Well, they slapped an alliterative name on it that makes it, quiet quitting. So it's catchy. So kudos to whoever did that, because, it went viral. But this is something that has been around for decades. It's basic. Generations have been doing this. And if you've ever worked in an office where you all complained about the one person that wasn't doing anything, or when you asked them to do something, they said, that's not in my job description. Well, now there's a whole horde of people doing that, and now it's a trend. So quiet quitting is just doing the things that are in your job description. And when you leave at 5 o'clock or whatever you leave your job, that is it. You do no more than what your job requires you. And that's that. And I, when we looked at this article, someone said that they strive for mediocrity. So to be, mediocre. And so I'm going to try to do this without judging anybody's.
Okay, but hold on. So see, this is where things start to go awry for me. Mm-hmm. And different people's spin on it ends up taking this in different directions. The concept of, we have a contract, right? I show up every day at a particular time. I do the job that you have assigned to me. And at the end of the day, I go home, and at the end of some pay period, whatever that is, weekly, monthly, every other week, you send me a paycheck for what I have done.
Right.
Okay. There's that. There's a whole other thing about, I just strive to be mediocre.
Well, right? That's what one of the people said.
No, I know. I'm saying, but I'm saying in the grand scheme of things, you can go and do your job and do an excellent job, right? Or do a good job. You don't have to be mediocre. But the question then is whether mediocre is the right standard or not. I had a job evaluation years ago, and I made a comment that, the score that I got suggested that I was mediocre. And I was like, that's not good enough for me, right? I'm not striving. I'm not striving to be mediocre. So what you are interpreting as mediocre, this doesn't work for me. And they were saying, well, one, I'm not calling that mediocre. That means you're doing your job. And I was like, but I'm doing more than my job. Yes, we acknowledge you're going above and beyond, but that's what we expect. So the question, right? What is mediocre? What is above and beyond? And I think this is the core of the problem. And most of the problems that we have is that expectations are not clearly, they're not thought of, they're not clearly articulated. And therefore, you've got people approaching things from different points of view, different work ethics, and there's this mismatch. So I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
no.
That mediocre comment just that's
what
I know someone said that. I know someone said that, but I bristle.
I was shocked when I heard it myself. Right? I was like,
what? That's my mental model. I bristle at mediocre.
Absolutely.
Mediocre for someone else is like, well, that's what you pay me for.
Well, here's the deal. You can let's say your day job requires that or night job requires that you work 8 hours a day. You can give 8 hours of stellar work and clock out on time, right, and leave it behind you. But this notion that you're going to sit there and do the barest minimum, I think that's what people have a problem with. I'm gonna do my job, but I'm barely going to do my job. I think that's the issue. I'm just going to do it so that it's like, okay, what's a passing grade? A passing grade is D. That's how I'm going to do my job. And I think that is what is going to cause a problem for a lot of people, because then if you're just doing, barely passing, and then you go in, and that was also in the article that someone said they asked for a raise. Their boss was like, no, I'm not going to give you a raise because
that becomes the thing. Right? That becomes the thing. You don't get perks and kudos and promotions and raises for doing that. But that should be laid out, the expectation. I will pay you, right? I will pay you to come in and do the four corners of your job and it's just get it done.
It's like a parent saying, I feed my kids. You're supposed to feed your kids. But but the reason why folks are doing this, I get it, because they want to make sure that they're honoring their mental health, that they make sure that they're not overworking themselves, they're not burning out. That I totally get. I think what's missing is some balance, that you can
Oh,
actually,
absolutely.
you can put in a great job. You can absolutely give a great job, do a great job, and then, take care of your mental health. I remember when I used to go into my job, I would get in there just a little bit early. I wouldn't stay late. I would come in early, and I would do all the things I needed to do extra, and then do my job, and then I would go. That was how I handled it. I didn't want to stay late, but I came in just a little bit early. That allowed me to get home. It allowed me to unwind, unpack, the mental, stuff from the day, and live my life. That was how I handled it. But I wanted to make sure that my employer saw that I did good work. Now, this is different. This is a generational thing. They're saying that Gen Zs are doing this. So,
well, I will challenge that. Did a little bit of research. So again, I guess a lot of this depends on exactly what we're talking about, right? So if it is about people showing up saying, I'm going to give the bare minimum, not going to do anything else above and beyond, I'm not doing anything outside my job description, right? If that is the culture that you want, and we can talk about this in a bit, but if that works for your organization just to get the work done, which we talk about a lot here, right, on the State of Leadership, if it's about just getting the work done and the work is getting done, then it should not be a problem. Right? It should not be a problem because the work is getting done. If you are wanting or expecting something else from people, and they're not willing to give it, then there has to be some change in what it is you're looking for and the approach you use to go about getting that into your organization, right? At the beginning, reiterating it in real time and keeping that as part of the communication that is happening. At the same time, being someone who 99% of the time, probably 99% of my career, the bare minimum wasn't enough. There's this part of me that just doesn't understand that. And as a student, you know me, where we went to school together, it was not enough for me to say, I'm just going to write the bare minimum for my papers. And for me, the disconnect is that you do the bare minimum, but you expect something extra to come your way, some benefit, or that you should get something else, that you could even ask for a raise, right? Raises come unless you have laid out some other, process for who you give raises to. Raises generally don't go to people who just show up and don't do anything extra.
Well,
right? You got paid to do the job. Unless there's a COLA going on, you're not going to make more showing up just doing your job. So there are a lot of moving parts in both sides. I'm going to simplify this. Both sides, employees and employers, have to be thinking about what it is ultimately you want. We talk about this a lot. Vision. What is your vision for your company, for your department, as a manager of a particular set of people? What is your particular vision for this? Are you hiring people that fit within that have the values and the work ethic that you believe you articulated that you're asking for? So if and I have yet to see a job description, quite frankly, that doesn't say "and other duties as assigned." So, that becomes part of the expectation. And if you're communicating that, then I'm okay with you having some sort of expectation. That is not saying that negates people being able to set some boundaries and take care of themselves, take care of their mental and emotional health. I just don't see, and I get it. This is, something that's created, the alliteration and all of that, to get attention for whoever started it, whoever else is talking about it, including us. All right. It's an attempt to create a conversation. And there's just a part of me that says, and I absolutely agree with you. First of all, this is not new. And so we're making something out of something that is nothing. But the bottom line issue is one about what it is you want in your organization and what you're doing to create the culture and the environment that allows for what you want to exist, to grow, and to move forward.
Right. And there's another aspect of this too. One of the things that they said in the article was that a lot of these employees that are engaging in this phenomenon, for lack of a better term, a word, is that they want to work for organizations that are doing something, for climate change. That was the thing that kept coming up. Social issues or climate. They mostly kept saying climate change. That is not the only issue out there, but that's the one that seems to have resonated with a lot of the younger generation. Well, that makes sense, but then you should align your duties and your expertise with an organization that is working toward that. Not all organizations, we have organizations, we're not working toward climate change. We do what we can, right? I recycle. Yes. My carbon footprint is small. But if I take on an employee and they say, well, what kind of organization are you? I'm like, leadership development. That's what I do.
Right.
So it's on the employee to find an organization that is in line with that. Now, I can almost tell you right off the bat, I guess the philosophy is, well, if I were working for that type of organization, I would go above and beyond. Well, your work history is not going to prove that. So you're getting yourself into a bit of a bind, especially when we talk about references and things like that. You're not going to get that job.
Right.
No matter where your passion is. So, I think, and listen, this is all about social proof. They have the numbers, we do what other people do. And when the trend turns, if it turns, then people will do something else. But right now, this is the trend. So let's just see where it goes and if it's going to impact the way organizations recruit, hire, train, and move forward. So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, if it becomes an issue, there will be some changes that organizations will utilize in order to offset if it's a problem for them. You mentioned something about, doing something meaningful. Work is ultimately, which again is not new, right? This desire to want to do meaningful work. The reason both you and I are doing what we're doing is because we have wanted to do meaningful work. You were doing that to a degree in your corporate life. I added this, and here's one of those things where this is an above and beyond, right? My above and beyond was about my looking for where I wanted to go in the future. But it was a value add for my former employer. I wanted to be able to train and be involved in hiring and in promotions and HR related learning development and all of that, organizational change initiatives. So I volunteered to do those things. And I think that goes to your point when it's time to leave where you are to go somewhere else, and you have a history of showing up, giving the bare minimum, C's get degrees mentality. If you show up to your employer every day with that, that's the brand that will follow you. And does that help you in your next place? Which is why, again, I know I sound like a broken record, and for you, this is preaching to the choir. But you have to have a vision for what it is you want for your career. You have to have a leadership vision if you are leading in your organization, so that you can constantly be taking steps and actions that are moving you, minimally moving you in the direction of where you want to go, if not getting you where you want to go. So if your thought is, I'm going to do the bare minimum in my job, but someday I want to work for an organization where I can pour out all of who I am and give them all the core and essence, because they're doing meaningful work and I want to be a part of that. And the brand that follows you or precedes you doesn't communicate that, you're going to have a hard time making that transition. And the same thing for you as a leader. If you have a reputation as an organization that is, let's say, inflexible, not willing to work with your employees to help create a culture that is inviting and helps them to grow and to step into a better vision of themselves, quite frankly. If you are have a culture where people are saying, I have to do this to protect my mental health, then maybe you need to look at what you're doing that's having a negative impact on people's mental, emotional health. Right? Whether or not you make changes is a whole other thing, but you at least have to take the time to explore that something that you are doing collectively, certainly, is creating an environment where that's where people even have to go here. So I'm going to share my quiet quitting story, and then how I turned my quiet quitting in that same organization, how I turned it around. Now, of course, I didn't call it quiet quitting. It was just apathy. It was straight up. It was straight up apathy. But I was in a place in my life, some things that happened in my personal life that had me in a state, an emotional state that wasn't particularly healthy. And I was working through it. In the midst of that, I was learning that the job that I had wasn't the best match for me. There were aspects that I loved. The people that I worked with, some of the people that I worked with love, still to this day have relationship with. So there was that aspect, the people aspect. There were, but the politics, the nature of, and my job was in politics. So to not enjoy the political aspect of a job when that really is the nature of the job, it started to grate on me. I was still good at my job, and I showed up with a work ethic that had me doing absolutely the best that I could given what I felt about where I was, right? But I had an incident, and I don't know if I've shared this on our show before, but I had this incident. I had been doing this job for a couple of years, and I got a new boss. And the way I had been doing a particular aspect of my job, I had had permission from the prior boss to do this, and then to work weekends to get a project done because of the timing of the project and the other things that I was doing. Getting it all done in an 8 hour, not even a 9 or 10 hour day. And let's be honest, if you have a job where you have to be on constantly and you are in meetings and things, it doesn't always leave a lot of time to get the work done. And so for this particular project, for a couple of years, I took the project home over the weekend for a couple of weekends each summer to get the work done, to move it so that it could be completed by the deadline. It involved others outside of my organization, their input, and I was trying to be respectful of these people's volunteer time, actually, to get this done. So I worked around them and timing to get the project completed. Well, this one year after I got this new boss, I did the project the way I had normally. It wasn't a conversation that I had. I just did what I had been doing. And then I sent a note saying, I'm going to take the next couple of days off. I worked these last couple of weekends to get this project done. I'm going to take, a couple of days off, sort of as comp time. And the response was, we don't have comp time. I was like, well, yeah, okay, maybe not officially in the employee handbook, but I had been doing this. Other people in other aspects had done something similar. And it changed in that moment. It changed me. It changed me. And I was like, so it's okay that I give, but there's no reciprocity in giving.
No.
And in that moment, I was like, okay, that is the last time I work a weekend. That is the last time, with the exception of like 2 days at the end of the legislative session. That's the last time I'm working late. After, I'm not working evenings. If it doesn't get done during the day, it's not getting done until the next day. And that was the attitude I had until there came a point in time where there was something that I wanted. And so the point of all of this is we have to be, both sides of this equation, willing to talk to, communicate with each other and find where the goals of the employees meet the goals of the employer, and let's figure out how to make them work so that everyone is constantly bringing the best that they have to the table. And this is not, I'm just showing up to work, give me my check, and I'm going to move on. Because while it may work for a short period of time, it's not going to work long time for most of us in terms of getting what we want big picture. And the change was, I worked with, when I got yet a new boss, after that boss was done, when I had a new boss after that, having a conversation about what I wanted to do, right? Some of my personal goals and how I thought that the things that I wanted to do outside of work could actually be a benefit for our department, the organization as a whole. We had a conversation. I created the extern program. I created a training program. All of those things were to benefit me ultimately long-term, right? But they were a benefit to the organization at the same time. And so if we are willing to, we can find a way that quiet quitting and great resignations are not part of the equation. But you've got to stop and step back and ask some questions, do some soul searching, and then be willing, right, to make some changes that are not necessarily something that's within the four corners of, right, job descriptions and whatnot.
Well, here's the thing, right? And first of all, I want to say I'm sorry you went through that experience, and I wonder. I am not because I have the story, and it is absolutely something that benefits me every day in the work that I'm doing. So I'm not upset about any of the experiences I've had, particularly the bad ones, the negative ones, because there's something to be learned in all of them. Well, that's where the growth is. But I wonder what would have happened if you would have been shown some appreciation for that's what I'm getting at. Is if,
right.
If you were shown some appreciation,
I would probably still be at that job.
And that's.
But I love it here.
No, of course.
I like work. I wouldn't have been working with you.
Right, so. right. Absolutely. But I just think it's funny because I think that the problem The problem exists when organizations think that people will, should be going above and beyond all the time and expect that, and then don't appreciate, then that becomes the norm, right? And
And
then
I
there's
think
no
that
appreciation.
is probably more for the vast majority of people, notwithstanding the, I strive to be mediocre and some of the other. I think that's probably the core essence of this, right?
Yeah.
In terms of I'm not getting the appreciation. I'm burning myself out, and for what? And nobody appreciates what I'm doing. I don't get any reward for it, and therefore, I'm just going to do my job. I'm just going to show up, do my job, and keep it moving.
Absolutely. And I think that's, that's probably at the core there. But I just want to put a fine point on this, is that in the article, it said that Gen Zs are doing this, right? But not all Gen Zs are doing this.
True.
Right.
And not only,
not only, right? Because that's the generation that's coming up into the workforce right now. That's where the focus was in this article. But the thing that I want to point out is, okay, we have to be careful not to rush to stereotype Gen Zs as, oh, they're lazy, they're not gonna, because they're not. I mean, this is just a trend that somebody is seeing, and of course, like I said, when there's social proof, it tends to kind of escalate. However, I'm sure that there are plenty of Gen Zs that are working extremely hard in all kinds of organizations, and their passion is to work with an organization that is working on climate change, and they will get the job over someone else in the same age group that just was mailing it in for years and years and years. So consider that as well. There are people out there that are, okay, maybe this isn't the job that I've dreamed of, but this is a stepping stone to get me to where I'm learning something here. This may not be my dream job, but I'm learning stuff, whatever. And there's always something to learn at an organization, even if it isn't I've worked in, as you know, I've worked in all entertainment industry, I've worked in finance, and I've worked in healthcare. There was always something to learn. Now, were these jobs my dream jobs? No. Were not my dream jobs, but I learned something. The other thing is, if you want to negotiate, you need to have something you need to have a bargaining chip. You need to have something that you can bring to the table. And you talked about my last job doing meaningful work. I created that. I created the internal coaching program there, and I used my negotiation skills to make that happen, because that was seen as, okay, well, and it's no surprise to you, probably a surprise to people listening to the, watching the show, that when they initially asked me to coach people, they were having me coach people that they were going to fire anyway. And when I caught wind of that, I was like, we're not going to do that. And I said, we're not going to do that. If you call me in to coach somebody, we need to be doing everything we can to save that person's job. I am not going to participate in that. So, that's off the table. Now, there were some people whose jobs were in trouble, for lack of a better word, but I was able to open that up for everybody. Everybody, even employees who were doing, in the organization's opinion, a great job, could come in and get some coaching, because we weren't going to do that. It wasn't going to be seen as a punitive thing. We weren't going to look at, and I used my negotiation skills to do that. Now, the bargaining chip that I had was, I came in early, did good work. And even though I left, when it was time to clock out, I had worked, earlier. I was there earlier. So I worked a little more than my standard, 8 hours a day. So if you want that for yourself in any organization, you're going to have a bargaining chip, and that comes from doing some extra work. That's just,
No, I agree with you wholeheartedly. As we begin to wrap up, I want to say that I pulled another article. I will put the link for the articles in the post, but there was another article that I pulled up on this, and it talked about a poll that Gallup had done earlier this year that talked about engagement. And sort of where we are with engagement right now, and the result was that about 32% of employees are engaged, right? And that's down 4% from 2022. I don't think that is I don't think that's much of a surprise that it would have gone down over the last couple of years. That it is that low in general is the problem, right? That is the problem. We had a program earlier about engagement, and so I'll run that as an encore. We talked about engagement and things that you can do to turn that around. And the numbers are not all that different between Gen X, Gen Z, older millennials, and baby boomers, right? When they did these poll numbers, that the engagement is between 31 and 33%. Mm-hmm. So it's not that huge a gap between the generations.
No.
What is maybe, and I don't actually find this interesting at all, that employees who are remote or working hybrid schedules are actually have higher levels of engagement. They're at 37%, still not high, but higher than those who are in the office or on site, which is at 29%. And that speaks to this continuing, there's this push to continue to bring people back into the office. And yes, there are some advantages to having people in the office, but like all things, you need to be clear about what you're doing and why you're doing it, what you're expecting as an outcome on the other end, right? Those are the things that we're talking about when it comes to the Great Resignation and engagement in general, quiet quitting, whatever the issues are, right? Are you talking with your people to understand what they want and need? And then are you looking for solutions to provide that after you've done some analysis on whether or not you should be doing that? And then communicating about the decisions that you've made and why you've made the decisions that you've made, involving them in the discussion in the process. All right. A lot of this is avoidable, but not if you've got your head in the sand, right? Not if you're pretending like there is no problem. And then when there's a problem, having to run to try to fix the problem, when a lot of this can be avoided at the front end by the way you are looking to hire, onboard, and retain your employees. Right. So it's a process and you have a lot of control over it, but not if you are pretending like it's not happening or that it's the problem of Gen Z or Gen X, or that's just the millennials, right? If you are negating, resisting the feedback, and this is what this is. This is feedback, right? Quiet quitting is feedback. It may be passive aggressive feedback, but it's feedback. And we did a couple of episodes on feedback and how to address it, right? How to use that feedback to help move you forward. So any thoughts on what leaders should be doing in this as we wrap this up?
Well, let's take a look at the leadership from the side of self-leadership for the employees, for the, Gen Z or whomever we're talking about. Look for organizations that are in line with, what you care about.
Absolutely.
And then if you do that, if you can do that, if you can't work for those companies, work for organizations that are going to set you up so you can learn something as you are working your way toward that organization, the organization of your dreams. Look for organizations that are in line with your values. And if you don't know what your values are, find out what they are. What do you care about? What are the principles you live by? Is really important, because I know a lot of grown folk, that they don't know their values. They're just kind of like, you ask them a question about values and it kind of stumps them. But from the outside view, it's clear. what their values are, but you need to be aware of your values and, and know what you want for your career. You said that earlier, having a vision of your career, knowing what you want and looking at it more as a journey.
Yes.
And journeys are not straight lines, and you may end up in a town you don't want to be in. So use it to refuel, to take care of, using a metaphor here, use it to take care of what you need to continue on your journey and get to where you want to be.
Absolutely. Any thoughts for the other side of this equation?
For the leadership? Yeah, absolutely. For organizations, pretty much what you said, make sure the people that you're hiring are a culture fit. Ask those questions. I've worked with so many organizations that when they have a vacancy, they just look to fill it with a body. That's always a bad way to go. Look for the people who are a culture fit for you. When those people come in, honor them, show appreciation. It's really, really important, and have those conversations with them about their goals. Yeah. And be honest and candid about whether or not you can help them get to where they want to go. We talked about this once before, and I know we're wrapping up, but I'm still in communication with the best boss that I've ever had. And she really sat me down one day and she's like, where are you going in your career? Yeah. and pressed me to answer that question. And it's because of her that I'm here with my, working with you in my own business, as a coach. It's because she showed that appreciation, asked me some probing questions, and helped me devise a plan to get there.
So I'm going to leave you with this thought, piggybacking off what Robert just said. If your thought as Robert was talking was, why would I help my employees reach their goals? They're going to just leave. Like Robert left and started his own business. I'm going to say this to you. The worst thing that will happen to you is not that your employees leave, is that they stay.
Yeah, exactly.
And quiet quitting would be a benefit over what there are other alternatives, right? Yeah. Quiet quitting is not the worst thing that's going to happen, and them leaving is not the worst thing that can happen. That real apathy of it's worse than just I'm going to show up and do my job. You're going to have people who are on the other side of barely doing their job, right? They probably aren't doing their job, but it's enough to keep you from firing them, right? There's a difference. So it could be worse. And that's my final that's my final word.
I agree.
Quiet quitting is not the worst thing that could happen, and someone leaving. So being open to helping them, your people, work towards their goals that can help your organization meet its goals. That's the sweet spot that you're looking for. That's the sweet spot that you're looking for. And if you can get there, you find your way to that place, then you'll have people showing up who are engaged, committed, wanting to do that. And they will get something in return besides a paycheck, which is what keeps people showing up. Paychecks don't keep people showing up. Right? And I think we've talked about the hygiene factors before. Mm-hmm. Maybe we have to have another conversation about that. Right? Revisit that. Those are the things that make a difference. And so we want to thank you for joining us today. If you have any thoughts about quiet quitting and experience with that on either side you'd like to share, we would love to hear from you. If there is another topic that you would like for us to cover, we're constantly scouring the news for interesting things to talk about. But if you've got something you'd like to suggest, we would love to hear from you and cover those conversations. If there's something that we can do to help you as a coach or a consultant on the organizational side, culture, team building, please reach out and let us know. We are available to help you with that. And so for this Thursday, Robert, and Whitney say thank you for joining us for the State of Leadership, Simple and Beyond. We hope to see you next week, 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. And until then, take care.
Bye now.